I always thought cheating would look obvious. Lipstick on a shirt, a perfume that did not belong in our apartment, a nervous laugh when I walked into a room. I thought there would be some loud, dramatic sign that the person I loved had chosen someone else. In reality, it started with something tiny. A missing charger. It was a Tuesday night, the kind that smelled like reheated leftovers and exhaustion. I came home from the office later than usual, my laptop bag cutting into my shoulder, my head full of numbers from the quarterly report. I went straight to the bedroom to plug in my phone and found that the charger on my side of the bed was gone. It was stupid, really. A small, white cable. But I knew exactly how that cable usually lay, half curled on the nightstand under a stack of receipts. That night, there was just empty wood. No charger. No receipts. Everything slightly too tidy, as if someone had wiped the surface clean and put only half the things back. I called out to Eric from the doorway, asking if he had borrowed it. He answered from the kitchen that he might have, he was not sure, he had been in a hurry that morning. His voice sounded normal. Casual. But when I checked his side of the bed, I saw something else missing. His charger was gone too. I stood there for a full minute, phone dangling from my hand, brain quietly collecting facts the way my job had trained it to do. I worked as a senior accountant for a mid-sized architecture firm. My entire life revolved around audit trails and inconsistencies. Numbers that did not match. Files that disappeared. Stories that did not line up. 2 chargers missing was not proof of anything. But it was odd. In the kitchen, Eric moved around in that distracted way he had when he was half in his head. He said he had ordered takeout, that it should arrive any minute, that he had a late night ahead and needed to finish a pitch deck. He looked tired. His dark hair was messier than usual, his tie loosened, his shirt sleeves rolled up. The kind of disheveled I used to find attractive, back when we were newer and everything he did seemed charming. As he talked, my eyes trailed to the counter. 2 empty wine glasses sat in the drying rack. We never had wine on weeknights. At least, not lately. I pointed at them. He glanced over his shoulder and said he had opened a bottle while working on slides, that he must have poured himself too much and used a second glass. He laughed a little as he said it, as if at his own ridiculousness. That explanation might have worked if the lipstick mark on the rim of one of the glasses had been his. It was not. I felt something inside me go very still. He said he was glad I was home, that he had missed me, that we barely saw each other these days. He walked toward me, leaned in to kiss me. I let him. His lips tasted faintly of wine and mint. Something in me recoiled anyway. I pulled back and told him I was going to shower. Under the hot water, my mind did what it always did when something felt wrong, it built timelines. Lists. Arguments. Missing chargers. 2 glasses. Lipstick. An apartment that smelled vaguely of jasmine instead of my usual laundry detergent. I pressed my palms against the tile and told myself I was being paranoid. The thing about paranoia, though, is that sometimes it is just pattern recognition without proof. I met Eric 5 years ago at a boring industry conference where everyone was trying to look more important than they actually were. He worked in business development for a tech company that built project management tools. I had just been promoted to senior accountant and was still pretending to be more confident than I felt. He had walked up to me at a coffee break and commented that the pastries looked like they had been in storage since the previous quarter. It was a stupid joke, but it made me laugh. We spent the rest of the day whispering little observations about people's slides and the way executives pretended not to be human. He liked that I was quieter than other women he knew. He said I had a way of listening that made him feel like his words did not evaporate. I liked that he admitted being scared of failure, that he did not act like ambition and vulnerability were opposites. 3 years later, he proposed in our tiny kitchen, hands shaking, with a ring that did not cost much but looked like something chosen carefully. I said yes while standing barefoot in old sweatpants, thinking that this was the kind of simple, steady love I had always wanted. Somewhere along the way, simple turned into predictable. Predictable turned into taken for granted. And now, taken for granted had turned into something else entirely. After the shower, I walked back into the bedroom and pretended everything was normal. Eric had balanced 2 cardboard containers on the nightstand, our standard takeout from the Thai place down the street. He said he thought I would be too tired to eat at the table. He said he wanted to watch that documentary we had been talking about. His kindness felt like a bandage placed over a wound he might have caused. As we ate, my phone buzzed. A message from Maya. Maya had been my closest friend for years, long before Eric entered the picture. We met on my first day at the firm, when I dropped an entire folder of printed spreadsheets in the lobby and she helped me gather them before anyone stepped on them. She worked in our internal audit department, had an aggressively dry sense of humor, and wore confidence like a cheap jacket she could shrug off whenever she wanted. She had seen me ugly cry after my father's funeral, had stayed on the phone with me the night a client accused me of misreporting figures, had been the first person I called when Eric proposed. Now her message said she was slammed with work but missed me terribly, asked if we were still on for our usual Friday drinks. There was a smiling emoji at the end, but something about the message felt slightly off. Too formal. As if she were writing to someone she needed to convince. I glanced at Eric. He was focused on his laptop now, fork balanced in his hand, eyes scanning whatever slide he was editing. I typed that drink sounded good. Then I added a question, as casually as I could, how was her week, really? She replied with something vague about living in the office and needing sleep. No complaints. No venting. That was unusual. Maya's favorite hobby was mocking incompetence. Something sat heavy in my chest. That night, after Eric fell asleep, his laptop still glowing faintly on the nightstand, I slipped out of bed and went to the living room. I sat on the couch in the dark, lit only by street lamps bleeding through the curtains, and listened to the refrigerator hum. I thought about my mother. She had always said cheating did not start in the bedroom, it started when someone chose to keep a small truth to themselves. She used to say it with a bitterness that made me suspect my father had not been as faithful as she pretended. When he left, she told me it was for work, for a new job in another city. I was 12. Old enough to know when someone was editing a story. He barely called after that. I told myself I had chosen better than she had. I was not sure anymore. I reached for Eric's phone on the coffee table and then stopped, hand hovering above it. We kept each other's passcodes. We always said we had nothing to hide. But entering it now felt like crossing an invisible line. I did it anyway. He had no unread messages. His notifications were cleared. The last thing he had opened was his calendar. I checked his photos. Nothing strange. Work screenshots. A picture of the cat from the building lobby. One from last week of me asleep on the couch, mouth slightly open. That image hurt more than it should have, I looked so trusting. I opened his messaging app. Most conversations were mundane. Then I saw her name. Maya. My thumb hovered. The last message was from 3 hours ago. She had written that she was on her way, that she would let herself in quietly. His reply, a thumbs up emoji. My stomach lurched. I scrolled upward. Messages over the past months. Jokes. Memes. Complaints about meetings. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, the tone changed. More late-night messages. More mentions of drinks, of needing each other's company, of things being easier when they were together. Flirting disguised as support. My chest went tight. There were no explicit declarations. No photos. No, I love you. But there was intimacy, an emotional closeness that belonged to me, and somehow had migrated without my consent. One message from last week made my hands go numb. Maya had written that she was glad he finally admitted it, that they could stop pretending their connection was only friendly, that stealing an hour here and there made the rest of the week bearable. His reply said he was scared of hurting me, that he needed time. He had never mentioned being scared of hurting me when we talked about finances or the wedding venue or kids. But he mentioned it to her. I put the phone down carefully, as if it were fragile. In the bedroom, he shifted in his sleep. I thought about waking him up, demanding explanations. But I knew how that conversation would go. He would say they were just close. He would say I was reading too much into messages. He would say nothing had happened physically. Maybe that was even true. But betrayal does not need a bed. It needs secrecy. And they had plenty of that. I spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through 10 years of friendship with Maya and 5 years with Eric, searching for moments that now looked different. Little disappearances. Little slips. The time she canceled drinks at the last minute because she said she felt sick, and he showed up 40 minutes late from a supposed client meeting, smelling faintly of her perfume. The way she teased me about being too loyal, as if loyalty were a flaw. The way he always insisted that the three of us hang out together, then drifted into private jokes with her. By morning, I had made 2 decisions. The first, I would not accuse either of them without seeing something undeniable. The second, if I did see it, I would not simply walk away. I would burn down whatever they had built on my trust. 2 days later, on Friday, I walked into our usual bar with my stomach tightened into a knot. Maya was already there, sitting at a high table near the back, a half-finished gin and tonic in front of her. The place hummed with post-work exhaustion, low lighting, overlapping conversations, the clink of glass on wood. She waved when she saw me, her face lighting up the way it always did. For a second, I felt disoriented, her joy looked so real. If I had not read those messages, I might have believed it. She hugged me, holding on a moment longer than usual, then leaned back and said I looked like I had slept maybe 3 hours all week. I said I could say the same about her. She laughed, but her eyes were scanning my face like she was searching for something. I ordered a drink and forced my shoulders to relax. We talked about work first, the safe topics. She complained about a junior auditor who kept asking the same questions. I complained about a client who insisted on rounding numbers emotionally instead of mathematically. Eventually, she asked how things were with Eric. I watched her carefully over the rim of my glass. I said they were fine. Busy. Distant lately, maybe. I said he had been working on a big pitch. I asked if she had seen much of him. Her fingers tightened around her drink just slightly. She said she had run into him a couple of times near our building when he came to pick me up, nothing more. Her tone was breezy. Too breezy. I decided to test something. I said I had a weird feeling that someone had been in the apartment this week while I was at work. I mentioned the wine glasses. The perfume. The missing charger. I said I was probably being paranoid. She shifted in her seat. Her smile did not reach her eyes. She said maybe I needed a vacation. That I had been on edge lately. That sometimes stress made people imagine things. I nodded, pretending to accept that. Inside, a very calm anger began to pool. As the night wore on, we drank more. Her laughter loosened. So did her tongue. She started talking about risk. About how people like us tended to cling to stability because we grew up with the opposite. She said sometimes stability became a cage. I asked what she meant. She said she had always admired me for committing so fully, to my job, to my relationship, to this version of adulthood my younger self would barely recognize. She said she was not sure she could ever do that. She liked to keep doors open. I said open doors made it easier for people to walk away. She looked at me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. She said sometimes people walked away because they never felt they were allowed to arrive fully in the first place. I did not know what that meant. We parted just after midnight. She hugged me again, said she loved me, said she was always on my side. Her words felt like a script she had practiced so long she almost believed it. The next afternoon, I got the call that changed everything. It was from the CFO at our firm, Daniel Morgan. He rarely spoke to anyone below partner level, so seeing his name flash on my screen made my stomach drop. He asked if I could come into the office. He sounded tired. Not angry. Tired. When I arrived, he ushered me into a small conference room and closed the door quietly. He said they were conducting a routine internal review before our external auditors arrived, and something unusual had come up in one of the project accounts I managed. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts of transactions, small transfers from a client escrow account into a secondary account with a name similar to mine. Not my account. But close enough to be confusing at a glance. I frowned. He told me to look at the authorizations. Each transfer required 2 digital approvals, one from the project manager, one from the senior accountant. The digital signature on the accountant line was mine. I felt the blood drain from my face. I said I had never approved those transfers. The signatures must have been forged. Or the system compromised. He said they had already checked. The approvals came from my login, from my device, during office hours on days I had been present. My mind raced. I thought about the times I left my workstation unlocked for a few minutes. The times I stepped away to get coffee while a spreadsheet loaded. The times Maya had stood beside my desk, leaning over my shoulder, tapping the trackpad. A cold understanding began to form. I told Daniel I wanted to see the second signer. He hesitated, then turned the page. The project manager's signature belonged to Maya. I sat back slowly. He watched my face carefully. He said he was not accusing me of anything yet. He just needed answers before the external auditors saw this. He said if there was an innocent explanation, this was the time to give it. I thought about giving him one. I thought about telling him I must have clicked something without realizing. That there was a bug in the system. That another employee had used my login. But I was done covering for people. I said I believed someone had been using my access without my knowledge. I said my friendship with Maya gave that someone plenty of opportunity. I said I realized how bad that sounded. I said I had proof of other deceit, though unrelated, that made me think she might do this. He asked what kind of deceit. I thought about the messages between her and Eric. About the late nights. About the missing charger and the wine glasses. I realized something crucial then. If Maya and Eric were working together on an emotional level, what if they were working together in other ways too? Eric's job in business development gave him access to potential investors and clients. Maya's an audit gave her access to our internal controls. Mine as senior accountant gave me access to authorizations. I had something none of them had, though. Suspicion. I looked at Daniel and told him I needed a few hours before giving him everything. He did not like that answer, but he agreed, setting a hard deadline for the next morning. When I left the office, the late afternoon sun hit me like a slap. The city felt louder than usual, like every car horn and footstep was turned up. I called Eric and told him I was working late, that he should not wait up. He asked if I was okay. I said yes, in a tone that made it clear I did not want follow-up questions. Then I went somewhere I knew I would find answers. Maya's apartment. She had given me a spare key years ago, insisted it made her feel safer to know someone could check on her if she went radio silent. I had never used it without her knowing. There is always a first time. Her building had a lazy doorman who barely glanced up as I walked past. The elevator ride felt endless, the kind of slow ascent that gives you too much time to imagine worst-case scenarios. At her door, I hesitated for one long breath. Then I let myself in. The apartment was quiet. Blinds half closed, air faintly scented with her usual vanilla candle. Shoes by the door in their neat row. A jacket on the back of a chair. A mug in the sink with coffee dried at the bottom. On the coffee table lay her laptop, half closed. Beside it, a familiar white cable. My charger. I walked over slowly and picked it up, the small plastic head smooth in my hand. My name was written in fading marker near the plug, the way I always labeled things at home so Eric would not accidentally take them to the office and lose them. I swallowed hard. I opened her laptop. No password prompt. I went straight to her email. At first, everything looked normal: internal audit threads, scheduling messages, discount codes. Then I saw a folder labeled external. Inside, numerous messages between her and an unfamiliar address linked to a private consulting firm. They discussed internal control gaps at our company. Ways to exploit them. Potential clients who might pay for that knowledge. One message from 3 months ago made me sit down. She wrote that she had access to an accountant with approvals and a boyfriend who could steer external investment in predictable directions. She wrote that she could move small amounts through a shell account without anyone noticing, as long as the numbers stayed under certain thresholds. She wrote that people trusted her because she offered to protect them. The reply praised her initiative and reminded her to leave no trace. I felt like I might be sick. I searched her messages for my own name. There were dozens. Mostly references. Sometimes compliments that read like insults in context. Reliable. Too loyal. Soft target. Soft target. I checked her cloud storage next. There I found a folder with a name that made my skin crawl. Backups. Inside, copies of system logs showing my user session times. Screenshots of my desktop taken on random days, short captures that could only have been made by someone standing at my computer. A photo of a sticky note with my long, complicated password written on it from 2 years ago, before I memorized it. She had been planning this for a very long time. I forced myself to keep going. Her messaging app had conversations with Eric. Much more explicit than what I had seen on his phone. Screenshots. Plans to meet. Jokes about me being too busy saving the company from tiny numeric discrepancies to notice real ones. One message from Eric gutted me. He wrote that he hated seeing me as collateral but could not pass up this opportunity. He said he would find a way to make sure I landed on my feet. Maybe he believed that. Maybe he did not care. I did not bother checking the bedroom. I did not want to imagine them there together. Instead, I copied everything I could onto a flash drive I found in her desk. Emails. Logs. Screenshots. The entire backups folder. I took photos of the laptop with my phone, timestamp visible. Before I left, I placed my charger back exactly where I had found it. I did not cry until I got back to my mother's empty townhouse. Tears came all at once, shaking breaths that felt like they might pull my ribs apart. I cried for the version of myself who believed being good and loyal and careful would protect her. I cried for the girl who thought her best friend's advice came from love. I even cried for Eric, for the version of him I had met at that conference, nervous and hopeful and honest. Then I washed my face, sat at the kitchen table, and turned into the woman my job had made me. The one who followed evidence. I organized everything on my laptop, zipped copies of Maya's emails and logs, notes about discrepancies in client accounts, screenshots of messages between her and Eric. I wrote a clear, calm narrative of events, stripped of emotion. My personal heartbreak could not taint the professional facts. By the time dawn came, my eyes burned, but my mind was steady. At 9, I walked into Daniel's office and handed him the flash drive and the printed summary. I told him I believed I had been set up as the fall person in a small but ongoing scheme to siphon money from client accounts. I told him my suspicions involved both Maya and an external consulting firm. I told him I had reason to think someone outside the company might be instructing her. I did not mention Eric by name at first. Daniel asked if I understood the gravity of what I was accusing her of. I said yes. He said they would need to involve external investigators and possibly law enforcement. I said I understood that too. He took a long breath and rubbed his temples, then said something I will never forget. He said he was relieved. Not because of what I brought him, but because it confirmed a feeling he had shoved aside for years, that he had trusted the wrong people with the wrong things. As I left his office, I passed Maya in the hallway. She smiled, then caught something in my face and faltered. She asked if I was okay. Her voice held real concern, and that almost broke me more than anything else. I said we would talk later. By noon, HR called her in. I saw from my office window as security escorted her out of the building hours later, her expression stunned, arms folded tightly across her chest. She did not look at my window, but I knew she felt me watching. The police arrived shortly after. Eric called me 3 times that afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. In his messages, he sounded panicked, said there had been some misunderstanding at my company, that Maya had been arrested, that they were asking him questions too because of his consulting contacts. He said he needed to talk to me, that we needed to get our stories straight. Our stories. Not his. Not hers. Ours. Around 5, I agreed to meet him at the apartment. When I walked in, he was pacing the living room, hair disheveled, shirt untucked. He looked like guilt personified. He started talking immediately, saying that what Maya had done was insane, that he had not realized how far she had taken things, that he had only introduced her to a friend at the consulting firm for harmless side work, that he never thought she would use my access. I let him talk until he wore himself out. Then I asked him one simple question. I asked him when he had decided I was expendable. He froze. I told him I had seen the emails. The ones with his name. The ones where he discussed me like a problem to be managed. I told him I knew he had been physically and emotionally involved with Maya. That they had been planning this for months, if not longer. He sank onto the couch, head in his hands. He said he had never meant to fall for her. That sentence made me laugh, humorless and harsh. He said she understood parts of him I did not. She took risks. She pushed him. She made him feel alive. He said with me everything felt safe and good and flat. He said he thought he could have both. My safety and her chaos. My stability and her excitement. He said he assumed the money thing would stay small, that no one would notice, that it would just top up a savings account here and there. He said Maya always promised she would make sure nothing came back to me. I told him that promise meant nothing because she had already put everything in my name. He admitted he knew. My hands went cold. He said he convinced himself he could fix it later. That once they had enough, he would confess, return what he could, smooth things over. He had built a story where he remained the hero, even while hurting me. That was the real betrayal. Not the affair. The way he wrote himself as the main character in my life while treating me like a side effect. He asked if there was any way back from this. I said no. He asked if I could at least tell the investigators he had cooperated. I said I would tell the truth, that he helped when cornered, not before. In the weeks that followed, everything moved quickly and slowly at the same time. Maya was charged with fraud, unauthorized access, and conspiracy. Eric's involvement was more complicated. He had been careful, and his lawyer was better than he deserved. There were negotiations, deals, disclosures. My statement became central. At work, I was placed on leave during the initial investigation but eventually cleared. Daniel apologized personally for doubting me. He offered me the option to transfer to another branch, fresh start, no lingering whispers. I took it. In the evenings, when the noise quieted, I found myself thinking about earlier parts of my life. About my mother, sitting at our tiny kitchen table, warning me about small lies. About the way she always checked locks twice. About stories she never finished telling. One weekend, I went back to her old townhouse and started sorting through the boxes I had left untouched after her death. In a folder at the bottom of a plastic crate, I found something that made my heart stutter. An old notebook filled with names. Contacts. One of them belonged to the very consulting firm Maya had been dealing with. Beside it, in my mother's handwriting, a note, "Never again." There it was. She had made her own mistakes once. Trusted someone she should not have. Maybe been tempted by shortcuts. Maybe that was why she had always been so strict with me about ethics and loyalty. It was not morality. It was fear that I would repeat her pattern. I sat on the floor, the late afternoon light stretching across the carpet, and realized something important. Betrayal does not appear out of nowhere. It travels through generations, through unspoken stories, through secrets people are too ashamed to confess. Maya had not invented deceit. She had inherited it in her own way. So had Eric. So had my mother. So had I, in smaller moments when I told myself everything was fine instead of asking questions. The twist was not that my best friend and my fiancé had betrayed me. It was that I had allowed my desire for a quiet, simple life to blind me to the complexity of human weakness. Months later, after the dust settled, I sat in my new office in a different part of the city. The view showed a river instead of a parking lot. My desk was bare except for a plant I had not yet killed and a stack of client files. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. The sender wrote that they had recently worked with Maya in a restorative justice program, that she was trying to make amends, that she had asked them to pass along a sentence if I was willing to hear it. She said she was sorry she tried to fix her life by breaking mine. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed a reply. I wrote that I believed she was sorry. But forgiveness, like trust, had to be rebuilt from facts, not words. I put my phone down and opened the next file. My life did not go back to what it had been. It moved forward into something messier but more honest. I no longer believed betrayal could be prevented with enough goodness. But I had learned that when the people closest to you choose deception, you still have one unbreakable thing left. The choice of what kind of person their betrayal turns you into. I chose not to become like them. And for me, that was the only revenge that mattered.